I got several types of plants that should be pretty frost hardy, and this is going to put them to the test tonight. But one thing that I'm most concerned with making sure I get a harvest from, or trying to get a harvest from, is my broccolis. I got some broccolis that have progressed pretty nicely, and I want to give them some protection, at least some of them, because I got like 15 down here, 6 of them right here, so I'm going to give some of them some protection. For those big broccoli seedlings, or not exactly seedlings, those are broccoli plants already. I'm going to get a little bit bigger of a cheapo frost protection 5-gallon bucket. Put that on top of them, and that's going to be the one I'm going to measure the difference between inside the 5-gallon bucket, what's the temperature going through the freeze, versus right outside the 5-gallon bucket, what's the temperature going through the freeze. That's what I'm going to measure. Let me show you the little thermometers that okay, so here they are. There are 2 little Bluetooth thermometers made by this company called Govee. No, I don't have any affiliation with them. Might be nice if I had a little affiliate link with them. That would be pretty cool. But anyways, and what you can do with these is hook them up to your Bluetooth, and you directly communicate with your phone through Bluetooth to get the digital record that these things store for a very long period of time. They will store temperature and humidity data for months on end, every 5 minutes. I mean, so they get a lot of little data piled up in them. And this is my last bucket. This is the one I'm going to put the thermometers around, in and around. And now for a thermometer on the inside. Here's the thermometer inside, and close it up. And one for the outside. Alright, got 5 bucket frost protections in place. I also have this nice looking little lettuce here. So how am I going to protect this little guy? Well, there you go. That's a well-protected little plant. Let's look at what else I have down here. I have another little lettuce. That's a bok choy, I believe. And so I have several more bok choys, a few more little lettuces, some Brussels sprouts, and random kales, all down these 2 rows. Okay, so what I got for some serious frost protection, well, maybe not too serious actually, some cheap frost protection is juice bottles. You drink a lot of organic juice in my house, and cut those bottles in half and, well, keep the tops on, and you got a little greenhouse, a super mini greenhouse, perfect for little seedlings. And in the past, I believe that these make maybe like a 3-degree difference. So outside temperature would be like 30 degrees, and underneath the little greenhouse it'll be maybe 33 degrees, and it can maintain that temperature difference maybe for an hour to 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours. If it stays down, you know, below 30 for hours on end, these may not be sufficient if you have very sensitive plants. But since all of mine are not very frost sensitive, these should work great even if it gets down into the mid-20s. Alright, there you have it. 22 little seedlings protected with the micro greenhouses. I got more, but this is just a test. And I don't think that these little greenhouses should be necessary for these cold hardy veggies, but this will be the test, and I might find out the hard way that they are necessary. These ones might all end up dying, and I got more of them way up here. A few more rows of them way up there. Now, down into the 50s with a steady cold wind from the north. Well, good morning. It's a cold one. It's about a little after 8 in the morning, and The frost is still covering everything. It's not looking too good for this garden. There's the frost on everything. Here's a little bok choy covered in frost. And when I'm looking at this, it's like frozen solid. I came out here about midnight and it was already below freezing, like 30 degrees Fahrenheit out here, which means that this freeze lasted like over 8 hours. It's when the freeze lasts a long time that your row covers will fail. So all these little guys with no cover may not make it. So the ones with the cover ain't looking too special either, because it's completely iced over on the outside, and I'm pretty sure that it's iced up on the inside, so that's not good either. Meaning all these little covers, which actually, believe it or not, these bottle tops will protect, you know, maybe about as good as a full-blown row cover would protect. But here's some broccolis. The main ones I'll be sad about losing is my broccolis. Here's my 5 buckets, and the one on the end here has the thermometer, which I'm gonna have to wait till everything thaws before I open it up. But you can see the thermometer on the outside is 30 degrees. Hey, Copper. That's rough. What are you doing, dum-dum dog? Okay, it's now a little after 11, and it's warmed up nicely out here. Super sunny, so let's take a look. Okay, first let's take a close look at the broccoli. Definitely completely thawed out. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's light green patch and most all dark. It might take a while for the full effects to be visible if the damage is there, but you can see it more on this one a lot. Light green patches surrounded by this darker green. And here's a turnip. I gotta say the turnip looks perfectly fine to me. And another broccoli. This one was completely exposed. Doesn't look as bad, but I have to wait on the broccolis to see. Let's topple over the buckets. That broccoli looks pretty good to me right there, compared to the ones that were uncovered. And now for the big reveal under the bucket. Alright, let's see how the plant is under here. Okay, there we go. Looks like under the bucket though has more vitality. It says it's 72 degrees under the bucket. That's because it heated up a little greenhouse inside the bucket. The thermometer that was outside the bucket was thermometer number 4. This one, thermometer number 2, that was
okay, you can see thermometer number 2 is the red data graphed here, and thermometer number 4 is the black data graphed here. Up until about, well, starting at 10 p.m. is when the freeze set outside the bucket, 32. And you can see that at that time there's about a 4-degree difference between inside the bucket and outside the bucket. 32 to around 36 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you come along and that 4-degree temperature difference is maintained between the two until you reach about 1 a.m., maybe 1:30, somewhere around there, a.m. And then the temperature outside the bucket is right at 29, but inside the bucket is right at 34. So that's now about a 5-degree difference between outside the bucket and inside the bucket. So it maintains this 5-degree temperature difference for the rest of the night pretty much until the freeze is over. But you can see that it doesn't dip down to freezing inside the bucket until near 5 a.m. in the morning, when it's near 28 outside the bucket. And then outside the bucket goes down to its minimum around 7 a.m. and 27 degrees. Inside the bucket is when it first dips below freezing at like barely for a few minutes inside the bucket below freezing before the outside sunshine hits it and warms it, and the temperatures start to shoot up at the end of the freeze.
Alright, so generally a few hours after a hard freeze, when things have thawed out, some of the grains are hard to tell for sure whether or not they got significant damage. Alright, it's several days after that big freeze, and I can finally tell for sure which plants have considerable damage on them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 broccolis are all little to no damage whatsoever from the freeze. Alright, so that's basically 100% protection from the freeze for the broccolis under the buckets. Outside the bucket though, here's one right next to this one that was inside the bucket. Significant damage on the large majority of broccolis that were outside the bucket. This one didn't have a bucket on it compared to this one that did have a bucket on it. You can see the damage. This one was damaged. You see definite death on some of this plant, but it wasn't killed completely. This one actually was surprisingly little damage, even though it didn't have a bucket on it. It looks practically almost as good as the ones that were under the bucket. So some good fortune for that one. So when I go down and add up all the broccolis that were outside the bucket, at least, or actually more than 80% of the broccolis that didn't have any cover, any frost protection, have significant damage from that freeze. As for the bok choy and lettuces and Brussels seedlings that were underneath the plastic bottle tops, they had basically no significant damage, but the ones that were not under the bottle tops had some weak seedlings that have pretty much perished, but the majority of them are surprisingly just fine as well. Pretty dark in there.